You are the solution. This is the method. The evolution of government. The evolution of democracy. The evolution of man.
Aloha, I'm Dan Marks of ArticleV.org. This summer, the Supreme Court destroyed the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. Should we subject each generation to the same battles of past generations just because we didn't make those changes permanent? Must we ask another martyr to walk in the footsteps of Martin Luther King Jr.? The Supreme Court nullified the Voting Rights Act of 1965 on top of their already terrible Citizens United decision. When we take a look at the Citizens United decision and the solutions about how to reverse it and regain our representation, the answers are not so obvious. How to reform political speech is very complex. Should we ban all contributions from all people, all voters? Some say we should, with an amendment to the Constitution, while others say no, just the corporations. They're the bad guys. Let's keep the corporate money out of our politics. Let's not allow them to purchase our right of representation as a constituent. But it goes a lot deeper than that. What about those recently stripped voting rights? Suddenly, a poll tax or other means of stripping voters from the rolls has suddenly become constitutional. We're going to need an amendment. One of the people who dares to explore the possible solutions is Marcia Everett, resident of North Carolina, Green Party volunteer, and co-creator of the Bill of Rights for Voting Equality. Let's get right to it. North Carolina has some major voting issues right now. These issues are making people take to the streets. Marcia, can you tell us about what is taking place in North Carolina weekly?
Moral Mondays. They ended nearby in Raleigh at the end of the summer, and then they were doing some in different places in North Carolina. There was one in Asheville. There were in other locations. I didn't catch where the last one was, but they are doing them here and there, and I expect they're going to come back around to Raleigh. There's a link that I was just looking at about a 12-year-old who spoke at one. I didn't catch where she was though. And she apparently they had a meeting in front of the governor's mansion, and they brought cake out to her, and there was a big thing about that. Or he's asking us to let us eat cake, basically. We're telling him we want to vote, and he's bringing us a plate of cake. And so his response was, oh, that 12-year-old was just a prop. And then her response was to read him the Riot Act and let him know that she was a suffragette. When McCrory got elected, he passed a few things, and that's what got everybody. The NAACP began marching. I think it was budget. It was budget cuts for the teachers and stuff like that. And they went out, and it was a small group. But when the Voting Rights Act got gutted by the Supreme Court, then it just flooded.
You did something different. You decided to get together with one or two people and sit down and try to figure out how to address these problems with the voting issues locally in your state, and actually it applies on a national scale. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the Bill of Rights for Voting Equality?
For voting equality. Yeah, we call it the BRVE. My reason for getting people to get together to work on it was from being in the Green Party. In North Carolina, you have to collect an insane amount of signatures in order to get on the ballot. And what happens is you have to collect a certain percentage of however many people voted in the previous election, in the previous governor election. So before 2008, we used to have to collect 60,000 signatures, and then after Barack Obama ran, the number went up to like 100,000, and that's for North Carolina. Every state has a different set of rules, and it was insane. And we went to court with the Libertarian Party here in North Carolina, and we didn't win. And I believe we went to appeal, and we still didn't win. The case was that having to collect that many signatures made it unequal for us to participate in politics, but they didn't see it that way. So I went online and I started looking at different organizations that work on things about voting, and I saw a lot of different groups dealing with a lot of different issues, and I said, especially after Citizens United came, which allowed for an insane amount of campaign contributions, that coupled with, and then the Supreme Court also threw in their decision that we don't have the right to vote, and that's kind of insane when you look at all the amendments that say you do have the right to vote. They can't be taken away for a certain reason, and they say, but that doesn't really say that you have the right to vote. So you add all that together, and you realize we really have to fix that in order to make any choices, because that's the mechanism that we use to make choices. So looking at the different organizations that were already working on it, a lot of what I say I because I didn't get as large a group as I wanted to work on it. I tried asking anybody who wanted to help, come on over and help. But they came, as is typical with Facebook groups, but nobody really wanted to do anything. But if you throw an idea out there, they'll be happy to jump all over it for you. So it wound up being me and one other fellow, William, I think you know of, and maybe a couple other people gave us some good direction to go to look for more information. And my main thing was that the ballot access had to be different. It had to be the same for every citizen. I mean, and that was the main thing that I had in mind. But then we also included, we need the right to vote. We included that we're still in debate about prisoners, but we're all in agreement that after they get out of jail, they definitely need to have their rights back. Whether or not you can vote from prison is an interesting concept. And then we ran into a guy who came up with a new idea of how to vote, how to be represented. And he has this thing called choice of representation. And that was mind blowing, because basically everybody gets who they want to represent them. And the way that works is right now my representative is Renee Elmers, who does not really represent me because she's Republican and she has a lot of different views than I did. And I used to have Bob Etheridge. He was a Democrat, but he's not really who I wanted. But had the election happened where I had voted for him and someone else had voted for her, they would both represent people here in North Carolina. But when they go to Congress to vote, they would only have the power to vote based on how many people voted for them. So it's like everybody would have like life chips or something like in a video game, and it would be the amount that you would have the amount of voting power based on how many people voted for you. So somebody might have 100,000 points, and somebody might have 1 million, depending on who. And then there's another guy who's been working forever on 30,000.org, and that was from the Constitution saying that we're supposed to have one representative for every 30,000. So we factored that in. We said, okay, if that rule was followed, if we divided every state by 30,000, that's how many representatives would be, and then it became astronomical. But we feel that with the technology we have today, everybody wouldn't have to be in the same place at the same time. And so we've been working with that. I mean, and then the main thing is corporations have to get out, so there's no money in politics. So we feel that that should come from the taxpayers. That should be something that's, it shouldn't be, uh well, let me rephrase it. I'm thinking that it's a public office. So you can't, just like you can't give money to a police officer and you can't give money to a judge, you can't give money to a lawmaker. And for all the libertarians that want to, and other people want to spend all the money that they want on politics, that's all well and good if you want to go make an ad, as long as you don't have the candidate's name in it. But you can't give the money to the candidate and to the campaign, because that's a public office. And it doesn't matter if it's $5 or it's $50,000, you're trying to buy that person. That person has to get in by saying what they plan to do, and you have to vote, yes, I agree with what you plan to do. Or we say, we want you to go and represent us, and this is what we want you to do. But no money should be exchanging. This is a public office, and it needs to be protected that way. And so those are the points of the brave there. It's very small, it's 7 points to just make sure people are allowed to vote, and that they need to be counted. The votes have to be counted by hand. It can't be counted by machine. And it might take a little longer, but it's worth it to make sure to have a record. And because so many parts of it have come from different organizations like the Brennan Institute and No More Stolen Elections and things like that, as soon as they got wind of it, that if it got as far as media, that they would then say, hey, and pick up the mantle and take it the rest of the way. So, and maybe people would debate it, and actually this is good practice, because if they call me for an interview, I'll have to.
Now with the Bush v. Gore Florida recount of 2000, there are a number of people who have had it with the Electoral College. They think that if you win the popular vote, you should win the election.
There wouldn't be any Electoral College with choice of representation, because you're directly voting for your representative. So your representative, if Republicans voted for somebody they wanted and they gave him 500 points, 500 people voted for him, there's more people than that, but and a Green Party person voted for who they want, and there's 200 people voting for that person, they all get to go. And when the bill comes through and they put their vote towards it, they put 200 points towards it, or it's 500 points towards it. So that forces them to have to go to find somebody else to agree with them and add their points to the vote. So you have to work with other people to get something passed, because you only have the specific amount of people who sent you. That's all you have to represent you.
You understand that Congress has very little desire to address these problems, and there's very little chance that they would introduce it, give it serious consideration. It was something this broad, and I admit initially you had some pretty big fears about an Article 5 convention of proposed amendments to the Constitution. Maybe you still do, but if you were me and you're advocating for an Article 5 convention, what would you do to ease those fears for most people who have not heard about this method to propose amendments yet?
Well, that's true. So why people wouldn't want it to be worse? There's two things that you need to make sure people understand when you're telling them about this Article V. One, that it's only amendments. You can't change what's already there unless you do it through an amendment. But the basic structure of the Constitution, a lot of people think that you have one of these and the whole thing get thrown out, just like the Articles of Confederation got thrown out, right? So that's one. And two, that it's very easy for somebody to object. And one objection would nullify the whole thing. So, and it has to pass through all these states. I think
that's great. I appreciate those comments. I don't want to wear you out here. I'd like to go ahead and hit the record button. So
that wasn't it.
No, that was it. Actually, I appreciate you stopping by, taking your time to tell us about the Bill of Rights for voting equality